The Maple Leafs win big in Pittsburgh. Could this be the turning point in the season? You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Thank you for making us your daily listen, and thank you for making the Locked On Network the #1 sports podcast network in North America. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. What's happening, Dave? How are you feeling on a Monday?
Feeling pretty mixed, actually. Kind of up and down.
Yeah, a little up and down. Is this based on the Leafs or like personal? You got some personal stuff going on or what? Are you talking strictly Maple Leafs?
We'll go strictly Maple Leafs on this one. That's for sure.
Well, so it's interesting. The Leafs go 500 on the weekend, right? They lose in Washington, and then they end up winning in Pittsburgh. But it was a bit of a mixed bag of a game, right? The deserve to win-o-meter was definitely in Pittsburgh's favor. I think I went and checked it out, actually. 71% of the simulations. Pittsburgh should win that hockey game. But Toronto was able to grind out a win, right? They're able to get offense. They're able to bury their chances, and they got great goaltending again. And that seems to be a theme. When the Leafs get good goaltending, they have a much better chance to win hockey games. And that's pretty much how the weekend went for the Maple Leafs. You want to start quickly with a comment on the Washington game, and then we can talk about the more positive outcome in Pittsburgh afterward.
Yeah, I mean the Washington game, just the frustrating part is you have a lead, and for maybe the second period on, stop playing. Like it was the same kind of mirror image of like a lot of games you've seen this year where they just kind of the other team pushes a bit more and they look lost in their own zone. And that was just a frustrating loss because again, Joseph Woll was being asked to save this team from defensive breakdown after defensive breakdown and couldn't do it. And he couldn't do it anymore. And that's what made it more disappointing is that this team is capable of better, and they showed it on Saturday that there is capable of better. But I just found that one left a bitter taste in my mouth considering things were looking better, and then it wasn't anymore.
Well, they got off to a decent start. Well, the start of that game, they got really lucky. They should have been down 1-0 30 seconds in. An early whistle kind of kept the Capitals off the board, and Toronto ends up scoring, and then they build on that, and they got a 2-goal lead, and then they surrender it. Then they're up, and they end up giving up 4 straight to the Washington Capitals. And the one that really bothered me, I guess, is like you talk about defensive breakdowns. The Beauvillier goal, like Morgan Riley, you can't defend that much worse. Just allowed him I don't know what he was doing, where he thought the puck was. Obviously, he lost his man behind him, and all of a sudden, Beauvillier got a pretty easy crack at the net. That's the type of stuff that just has to make Craig Berube's blood boil. And going into the Pittsburgh game, Berube came out and said, like, we have to defend, we have to check, we have to kill plays, we got to make things, harder for the opposition in our own end. And I would say they did that, more so than they did in Washington, but they still gave up a lot, right? Like it's interesting. They won the game 7-2. They blew out Pittsburgh. And typically when you win a game 7-2, you controlled the game from start to finish. Weirdly, that wasn't the case, though, Dave. Like, I don't know how you felt, but, that felt like it was more of a tighter hockey game than the score, was indicative of. But Artur Shilov's, gave up, 4 goals on like 9 shots before getting pulled by the Pittsburgh Penguins. And, the Leafs end up scoring 7. And I think they only had, how many shots did they even have in the whole game? Like 20-something shots on net. 23 shots on net, and they were able to put 7 into the back of the net. So, very strong shooting percentage in that game. They buried on their opportunities and chances, and it was nice to have a convincing win, I guess, on the scoreboard, but there's still some things that the Maple Leafs need to clean up, that's for sure.
Yeah, like Dan Muse is pretty much like Dakota Joshua just scored on us. Yeah, you're out of the game. Like, you're not staying in this game anymore.
Dakota Joshua had a great game, though.
That third line had probably their best game I've seen all season.
100% they did. And it was like, I think Joshua set the tone early. He had that massive open ice hit early in that first period, which kind of set the tone for how they wanted to play. They wanted to be physical. They wanted to be harder against it. Keep in mind, Joshua, not too long ago, was sitting up in the press box giving a reset. I think that was just his second game back, because it was the Columbus game, right, where he was sitting in the press box, I believe. Yeah, so just his second game back into the lineup, and he realized, hey, I got to do more, right? I expect more of myself, and for a guy who's always relied on playing with that edge and physicality, it hasn't been there for him this year, but it was there in the game against Pittsburgh. I thought he was incredible. Ended up with, obviously got himself on the score sheet, scored a goal, and was, impactful, 7 hits as well, a couple block shots. I thought Dakota Joshua, definitely his best game as a Maple Leaf, and one of the catalysts that propelled them to such a big victory against Pittsburgh.
Well, that's it, right? Like, he was the player that kind of that's more of what we were expecting from him, right? He's not gonna be the big offensive player. We know that, we get that, but it's the physicality, right? It's setting the tone physically, and that's what that third line needs to be. It's not expected to be a play driver. I mean, it's nice if they can do that, and they were doing that, especially when you have Bobby McMahon playing on that line. Mm-hmm. You expect that a little bit more, but it's being consistent in pushing the pace, getting into the to the dirty areas, and like that's what Dakota Joshua needs to do. If you're doing that on a more consistent basis, if you're telling the other team you're going to have a tough night because I'm going to be coming around and laying down tough hits, that can get into the opponent's head a little bit there. And I kind of felt like that was what was missing from him. Not necessarily the goals. The goals come when you get those opportunities and when you get a little bit more open ice to work with, especially on that play where he powers, he gets himself in a good position where the defender really doesn't have much to do other than, okay, now he's turning around and shooting it. My goalie should have this, and he didn't, right? But it's more, again, what it just seems like Craig Berube is not asking for a lot of some of these guys. Just do the simple things well, and that's, I think, hopefully seeing Dakota Joshua do something like that and kind of have that type of game, hopefully it's a catalyst to more for him.
Yes, more for him, and even Nicolas Roy, thought he had a good game, not just on the score sheet, but defensively. I thought that, obviously he gets the goal. I think he had an assist as well. So Nicolas Roy and Bob McMahon, like just that line as a general, for sure, to me was one of the best, probably the best line for the Maple Leafs in that game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Let's take a break. Let's come back. Let's continue to dive into the weekend. A couple other players stood out to me, and we got to ask the question, does that win, could it possibly be the turning point the Maple Leafs need to get this season back on the rails? We'll answer that next on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, and every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. And you can bet the next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game that moves fast, and so can you. Today's show is also brought to you by DripDrop. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, energy, my mood, even my skin. That's why I've been using DripDrop. It's doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power. No matter what my day looks like, DripDrop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half of the sugar of leading brands using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. I like using DripDrop as part of my daily routine. I'll mix up and pack it in the morning before I leave for work during that midday slump as well. It actually tastes pretty good too. And hydration has become a non-negotiable for me. DripDrop makes me feel sharper, calmer, and honestly, just better overall. Right now, DripDrop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to DripDrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That's DripDrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard and keep your body and mind performing at their best with DripDrop. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as always. And we've got brand new episodes coming to you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find the Locked On Leafs podcast on YouTube as well. All right, Dave. So the Maple Leafs with a split over the weekend, a not so inspiring effort against the Washington Capitals, and then I think a decent game, I guess, out of the Maple Leafs on Saturday. You certainly had some good solo performances, but definitely still some stuff to clean up. But hey, a win's a win, especially when you win convincingly 7-2. And I wonder, Dave, with a win like that, and you see everybody kind of getting in on the action, you got a goal from the blue line, you got a bunch of goals from your depth, McMahon, Joshua Waugh all scoring, Nick Robertson scored, Easton Cowan scored, Austin Matthews also with a very nice shot gets on the score sheet. Could this be a potential turning point for the Maple Leafs?
How many times have we asked this question so far? Especially in November.
After every win, which is very few and far between, it feels like.
That was their second road win of the season.
That was their second, I think third. I think it was the third road win of the season. But that's their first win in regulation in like 10 games or 11 games. Like, that's wild. That you could go that many, like this team could go that many games without finishing up in regulation.
Yeah, you're right. It was third road win.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the second one.
Columbus. Oh,
that's right.
Yeah. But anyway,
it's just one of those things where that's what this team had. Like, they've been in so many close games, and the margin for error for this team is super, super slim. Right? You make a bad play in the defensive zone on coverage, it's gonna hurt you, right? And against the Penguins, like, be honest, how many of you saw them go up 5-1? That Sidney Crosby scores to make it 5-2, and you go, like, no. Like, it's like it was like early enough in the third period where if they get another one and make it 5-3, it's like, we've seen this script before.
Yeah, and like Hildeby had to be on it all night long. Like, he made some big time saves. Again, like the Pittsburgh Penguins had a lot of grade A opportunities. They had a lot of chances. A lot of high danger chances as well. They outchanced Toronto in the game overall, and yet they only were able to get 2 past Dennis Hildeby. So he was fantastic in the game against Pittsburgh. But I think that's a pattern that we saw happen a lot last year, where when they get good goaltending, they're able to grind out those wins. And that's basically what happened in Columbus when they got that second road win that you forgot about. And again, like here, and 7-2. It's more of a lopsided score, but it was certainly a much tighter and closer game. And, Toronto could have been down 2-3-1, like in that first period. Like realistically, Hildeby had to make a couple of big stops there. So if when I pose the question, could this be a turning point in the season? I understand you sitting back and saying, well, we say that after every win, but at least I can sit here and say, well, there were some things that I liked in this game where if they can continue to play that way, then I think the Leafs are going to be in a better spot. One, the third line, right? You get that line of Dakota, Joshua, Nick Lavoie, and Bobby McMahon. If they can play like that, play with that much tenacity, forecheck the way they did, play that, strong and heavy on the puck. The cycle game was strong. They were winning puck battles and obviously going to the net and shooting and being effective. If they can continue to do that, well, that is going to be very beneficial because they have not pulled their weight even remotely close to, the way that they played on Saturday. So if they can play to expectation, I think that could serve as, a reason to think if their season turns around, it could help the Maple Leafs turn their season around. And then a couple other things that, again, like the goaltending is back, right? Whether it's Hildeby or Joseph Woll, I think what you saw from Hildeby on Saturday, you could probably trust this guy in a non-back-to-back situation now if you want to give Woll a night off, right? Like I think he's earned a couple more starts. If Stolar is going to miss some time, I think you feel comfortable with Woll and Hildeby, and if you got to throw Hildeby in to get Woll a night off here and there, I think you feel good about it, and you're going to get good goaltending. So you're getting goaltending. Your depth is coming up big for you. Like, think about it. At the beginning of the season, we talked about how the depth was much better and how their bottom six was much better and should be able to contribute, and that should allow this team to score more and to be in games and maybe win more. And that wasn't happening early in the season, but you get 4 of your goals coming from Joshua, Waugh, Robertson had that really nice kind of steal and score, and then Bobby McMahon gets one as well. When your depth can come through like that, you're going to win a lot of games. So there were some things that I liked in that game that if they can continue it moving forward, I think it can kind of springboard them into the right direction.
Well, that's it, right? It's trusting your depth to come up. And that was something this Leafs team hadn't done, right, in the past. And we were taught, with every single, with Brad Treliving coming in and then eventually Craig Berube, it was that idea that I was going to be on the depth to have to step up and fill in those minutes. And I always want, and a lot of people have been asking this question too, and like I think it's almost a definitive now. How the heck did Dennis Hildeby not win the backup job to start camp and to start the season? And why do they think that Caden Primo was the better option over Dennis Hildeby?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that was the incorrect decision. I mean, this Leafs organization has made that incorrect decision with the backup goaltenders before, i.e. Jerry Sparks, Curtis McElhinney, but we don't have to rehash that situation. I mean, in theory, I guess you want Hildeby to play games. Like, he's still young and he's developing. Mm-hmm. You want him to play games, so you put him down in the AHL so he could start as opposed to sit on the bench. I get it. In theory, it makes sense. But obviously, in a situation now where it's, okay, there's no more Primo and you need someone to start, you feel good about Hildeby getting in there. The Hildebeest getting in there and playing some games. He was great. Again, a .971 save percentage. Ended up with, how many goals saved above expected did he end up with? I'd imagine a decent amount. They had how many expected goals? 3.13. So 1.13 goals saved above expected for Dennis Hildeby. Like you look at the expected goal battle. Pittsburgh, they won 58% of the minutes, 58% expected goals, but were outscored 7-2. So 2 things: one, the Leafs buried their chances, and Toronto got good goaltending. So when those 2 things are clicking on the same night, you're going to end up in a positive result, and that's ultimately what happened for the Leafs. And hopefully they can carry the momentum forward throughout the rest of the road trip.
Well, that's it. Like, we talked about this road trip being, and a lot of teams will say like the road trip could be a good thing for the team. You bring some more together and things like that. Again, I wasn't a fan of how obviously the Capitals game went, but look, you can say, okay, that was something that happened. You just get over it and you find a way. Now, unfortunately, the road doesn't get easier over these next two, especially with Florida and Carolina coming up.
Yeah.
But this is now also we've seen this team rise to the occasion more against the tougher opponents, because the tougher opponents generally bring out the best in the group. But it's also how
last year in the past, this year a little different.
Yeah,
it's been a completely different season.
I think Florida is also not the same this year as they were last year. I mean, we'll talk about that more tomorrow, but I do think that at this rate, the Leafs have to just be worried about building themselves back into what they believe they can be, right? And so offensively, we know this team's got the offense. Now the depth is starting to come through on the offense because it's been carried a lot by the top six for the most part, but now the depth is starting to really come through. It's just a matter of getting those details defensively working.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a lot of praise that I'll give a second to Troy Stecher for the game that he had, but to put a bow on the forward group, how did you feel about Max Domi and his return to the lineup?
I thought it was, a better result for him. I don't think it was perfect, but I mean, I think you start to see what maybe Craig Berube sees and why, he did what he did. And look, no team wants to scratch players. I mean, I'm sure many of you saw the discussion on the panel about scratching players. Coaches don't like to pull that card unless they absolutely have to. But I truly did believe that Max Domi needed that to happen.
Yeah, and so if you missed what was said pregame, when asked about or after the Washington game, after he was healthy scratched, Craig Berube said, quote, "When he's skating and moving, he's an effective player, but it's too inconsistent," and says that essentially when it's got to be all about pace for him. And I thought he played with better pace tonight. I thought that he skated a little bit more tonight. I did want to see more physicality from him. I thought that could have been an area where we still want him to get it done. But finished night with a couple helpers, had a really nice feed to Oliver Ekman-Larsson there on the power play, and then that nice little drop pass and kind of took the defender with him to give a clear shooting lane for Austin Matthews on his goal. So a couple nice plays for him, and hopefully that gives him some confidence moving forward. I think this team just needs confidence, and that's another thing where I look at a win like that, 7-2, pretty convincing. A lot of people get on the score sheet. 12 of your 18 skaters end up on the score sheet. Your goaltender plays well. You get a power play goal, which is very few and far between. A lot went well. A lot went right for this Maple Leafs team, and the confidence that I'm sure a game like that could give them could go a long way. And I think that's a reason why you could look at it and say it very well could be the turning point. It has to be the turning point, though, Dave. I think that's ultimately it. Can it be? I guess we'll see, but it kind of has to be because you got to start stacking wins here. We're into December now, man. Like the fact that this team is still under 500 and we're into December is not a good spot to be in. And you've got a tough test in Florida, who's ahead of you in the standings, right? You got to try and take points off them. And Carolina is one of the best teams in the East, so that's going to be tough to get points as well. So you got to finish the road trip strong and take the momentum from that Pittsburgh game and go forward with it and try and finish up with at least one. Maybe you can get two and end up on a 3-game winning streak, and maybe you can kind of get things rolling in the right direction for this team.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's really what it is. Yes, it's good to get the win, but you can't follow it up with a backbreaking loss or a tough loss.
Right.
You have to start stacking wins at this point.
And that's been the problem with the Maple Leafs. Every time we sit here and say, oh, could this be the turning point? No. The next game, they followed up with a dud, a stinker. Can't happen Tuesday night in Florida. Can't happen. Have to play well. And quite frankly, have to get points. Like the clock is ticking on the season, man, to turn things around. So this weekend kind of has to be that turner, well, I was going to call it TSN turning point, but the turning point for the Maple Leafs this year had to be the win Saturday night against Pittsburgh. It just has to be. One other guy I want to give some credit to in this one is Troy Stecher. We'll take a break. We'll come back. I got some data for you from stats, some underlying numbers that maybe proves that he could have been a very, very savvy waiver wire pickup for this Maple Leafs team and could have a role moving forward. We'll get to that and more next on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Today's show is sponsored by Farm to Fork. If you're a fan of premium, locally farmed meats delivered straight to your door, I've got exciting news. Farm to Fork makes it easy to get high-quality steaks, air-chilled chicken, well-caught seafood, and more, all with no antibiotics, hormones, or GMOs. Plus, everything comes flash frozen and individually packaged for your convenience. All Farm to Fork meats are raised on Canadian farms, so when you order, you're supporting local producers. It's time to buy Canadian. Farm to Fork meals are top-notch. You know, there's some quality steaks, tender, juicy, and they're perfectly cooked. And their chicken is air-chilled, so it's fresher and more flavorful than what you get in the store. They're delivering all across Ontario and Western Quebec. And the best part, delivery is free with the minimum order of $199. You don't even have to leave the house to get this quality. So we've got a special promo code for you. Use code LOCKEDON40 to get $40 off your first order at Farm to Fork. Visit farmtoforkdelivery.ca to start stocking up on the best meats around. Again, that's LOCKEDON40 for $40 off your first order. Farm to Fork, delicious, locally farmed meats delivered straight to your door.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you, as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. Brand new episodes coming out daily. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and also up on YouTube. So the Maple Leafs split the back-to-back this weekend, a loss in Washington, a win in Pittsburgh. Can it springboard them into a string of games? Got to start stacking wins, as we were alluding to a moment ago. And a guy who might be able to help with that moving forward here is Troy Stecher, Dave. This guy was claimed off waivers a couple weeks ago and has somewhat, I don't want to say he's stabilized the blue line. That is definitely a hyperbole, but he had himself maybe a career game against Pittsburgh, and his numbers have been very good ever since he landed here in Toronto. Wasn't a move that, a lot of people looked at and said, oh, wow, we got Troy Stecher. That's going to help this defense. But it certainly has. He's got a 62% expected goals since arriving in Toronto. His expected goals against per 60, team best 1.6 expected goals. He's only given up, barely giving up any scoring chances, only giving up 3.93 high danger chances while out there. And like I said, best game of his career the other night against the Pittsburgh Penguins. I tweeted this out, Dave. Listen to these stats. He played a game high, 23 minutes and 52 seconds. He had 1 assist. He was a +3 on the night with a block, a takeaway. The Leafs outscored the Penguins 3-0 when he was out on the ice. There was a 9-7 shot share at 5-on-5. This team got dummied in the shot department at 5-on-5. Somehow he was on the ice for more shots for than against. And high danger chances at 5-on-5. He was on the ice for 7 for the Maple Leafs, just 4 allowed while he was on the ice for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He had 0 offensive zone starts. 0 offensive zone starts in that game, 8 defensive zone starts. And you know who the line he was matched up against primarily throughout the night was? Sidney Crosby. The Sidney Crosby line. He essentially, along with Jake McCabe, shut down the Crosby line. I mean, we have been talking about Simon Benoit not being able to defend in his own zone all season long. Troy Stecher gets an opportunity with Benoit tending to a personal matter. He gets late, gets scratched. Troy Stecher gets put up into a top 4 role, and he churns out quite a game. And this could be a nice development for the Maple Leafs if Troy Stecher can become kind of an everyday member for this squad. Maybe not a top 4 guy, but certainly looks like he could play effective third pair minutes for this team.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why he's stuck around as long as he has, right? Like, I know people, again, you talked about it. People weren't exactly enthused with that pickup because they saw more as a depth move, given the injuries that they've had and the lack of right shots available. And he's proven that, yes, maybe it's going to be a little far-fetched expecting to be a top 4 guy for this team, but he is giving you way more on that right side than anyone in terms of the depth guys. Philip Myers, Benoit. I mean, Benoit's technically on the left side, but just in terms of the depth being asked to contribute more, he's the only one that has shown to be capable of doing that.
Well, because the other thing too is it allows the Maple Leafs to actually have a proper righty-lefty balance.
Yes.
Right? You can have a proper righty-lefty balance now that you have a guy like Troy Stecher. Like, when healthy, how does this sound for a defensive group? McCabe and Tanev as your shutdown group, right? Hopefully, Carlo and Riley can get back to the way they were a year ago. Brandon Carlo, when healthy, maybe that was the issue. He just wasn't playing healthy, and that was a big reason why he was struggling lately. He gets healthy, you've got Carlo, Riley as a second pair, and then all of a sudden, hey, now you've got Troy Stecher, who can play on the right side. He's a right shot defenseman on the third pair. Now, all of a sudden, Oliver Ekman-Larsson can move over to his natural left side. You've got Larsson and Stecher as your third pair. That's pretty good depth. Like, that's a decent 1, 2, 3 for the Maple Leafs. So if Troy Stecher can continue to play like this, the Leafs may have a little bit of a gem of a find here. Again, not that I'm expecting him to take on top 4 minutes on a regular basis, but I think we've seen, and I mean, whether it's Simon Benoit or it's Justin Hall or it's, the young kids when it was Timothy Liljegren or whoever it may be, depth defensemen tend to get picked on in this city because they're on the ice for a lot of mistakes. If a guy can be out there for 14, 15 minutes a night, not make mistakes, that's going to be beneficial for this team. So that's another thing too. Again, we talk about this being a turning point. If they have somehow found a player in Troy Stecher, he's been around a while. I get it. And he's been an NHLer for a while. But if he can play like that moving forward, just gives you depth and balance to your lineup moving forward. And I like it. I like the prospects of it at least.
Yeah. I mean, look, and again, I understand people want the defense to be physical, tough to play against, but they also need, the issue is, it hasn't been the physicality and the size, it's been the ability to move the puck.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The best way to defend against a player like Sidney Crosby, force Sidney Crosby to be in his own end versus in your end, right?
Yeah. Stecher did a good job of getting the puck and moving it out, right? Like, again, that's the benefit of being a veteran. He's been doing that his whole career, right? Getting the puck out, making that first pass out of the zone. So Stecher's been great since coming to Toronto. And will it fade? Will will the shine come off of him at some point? Possibly, but I've been impressed so far. And he's not a guy that when healthy, I don't know if he's somebody who, like, when the whole team is healthy, it'd be very difficult for me to put Simon Benoit back in the lineup over Troy Stecher. Very difficult for me to do that at this point.
I really hope that's not the case. I do think that this is, again, the balance is one thing, but just the confidence and knowing that you, and funny, I don't think many people would have thought this at the beginning of the year, that you would have more confidence in Troy Stecher on the blue line than Simon Benoit.
Yeah, well, he wasn't on the team 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
He was with the Edmonton Oilers, actually, and apparently wasn't good enough for their defensive group. But coming over to Toronto, he's been everything and more than we could have asked for. That's for sure. And just hats off. Just a great game Saturday night in Pittsburgh. We'll see if he can do it again tomorrow night in Florida. We wanted to get into the comments that Elliot Friedman made on the broadcast about there not being a quick move or quick trigger when it comes to management or coaching with the Maple Leafs. I think we'll have to save that conversation for tomorrow, though. So we'll get into that stuff tomorrow. We'll tee up the game against the Florida Panthers. So make sure that you are subscribed to the Locked On Leafs podcast for daily podcasts. That'll be on the schedule for tomorrow's show. Let's thank everyone for listening and supporting today's show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. So we'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.